This is Barrie, a city constantly evolving. At any time, a whole host of pressures challenge the intricate tapestry of city government. In this series, we will explore the priorities deemed essential for progress, even if they don't always inspire unanimous applause. Join me each week for a candid conversation with a member of our city government as we uncover the stories behind the scenes of Barrie, a city on the move. Welcome to Barrie, City on the Move. I'm your host, Arif, and it is my pleasure to join you wherever you're receiving this content, whether it's online, streaming, at home, on cable. Thanks for being here. In this series, we aim to cover the inner workings of City Hall, governance, operations, what it takes to bring a quality of life to the residents of the city of Barrie. And joining me today is Mayor Alex Nuttall. Mayor, thanks for joining. Appreciate you're here. We are halfway through your term. Let's have a good conversation, but I really am glad you're here.
Well, thanks for having me today, and obviously, thank you to Rogers for putting on this series. It's really helps explain some of the, as you said, the inner workings of the city, but more than anything, gives updates on the things that we're working on, and folks can, stay in tune and stay up to date with the projects that are going on in the city of Barrie.
Absolutely, and staying up to date, we are halfway through the first term of you as mayor and your council colleagues, and certainly a lot has happened, a lot has transpired within the city, within the country, within the province in the last 2 years, and you and council members did run on platforms. You went to the people, you knocked on the door, and you said, this is what I'm hearing, and this is a vision that I have, and I'm looking for your support to go forward. And so far, 2 years in, why don't you take this first segment and give us a bit of an update, a progress report on how you feel you and council have done. And I do want to I think it's important to make it clear, it is mayor and council that has to work together and work with staff and encourage staff to come to the table and help you meet those objectives. But give us an idea on how these first couple years have gone.
Well, yeah, thank you. I think number one, from a council perspective, it was important for me to restore the dignity around the table, to restore everybody working together, common vision. We may not agree on how to get to the end, but we're all going to agree that we're focused on results and we're focused on delivering on the priorities of the people of Barrie. And really that entire cohesive team atmosphere has been restored. It's been restored for council. It's been restored in terms of the relations between council and our public servants, and it's been restored with our provincial and federal counterparts as well. There was a frostiness and iciness that existed during the last term. Some of that, I think, was the partisan relationships that existed between the mayor and council, as well as the provincial and federal governments. And part of it was what was happening around the table in terms of the infighting and the focus on what mistakes individuals were making, rather than focusing on, when we work together, this is what we can achieve. And so I'm really, really happy that we were able to get there. It's work every day to continue that forward. I don't think the work on that subject matter ends, but we do have a very cohesive team that works together and has a common vision. And when you have everybody rowing in the same direction, when you have everybody trying to work together and put the people of Barrie first, the results come, right? And so when you look at my election promises, it was on 0% operating increases for city operations. That's 3 years in a row now. We've met that, and in the fourth year we'll meet that as well. It was to look at the infrastructure reserve and how we're going to fund that, make sure that we are investing in our infrastructure, fixing the roads, getting the bridges built, community centers, that community building atmosphere for projects to be successful is being created, and that's great to see. And so you say, okay, well, Alex, how do you know that these are successes? Well, S&P came out and said they're going to likely increase, or they put us on notice to increase our credit score from a AA+ rating to a AAA rating. That means we're going to save dollars on any debt costs we have. It means they're saying we have an air of confidence in the city of Barrie's finances going forward. It means that we're managing the books of the city of Barrie well on behalf of the people of Barrie, and it's really good news. And then you also look at, okay, what are the dollar effects that we've saved over the last couple of years, and it's in excess of $60 million. Day one, we said no to the rain tax. You know, the wastewater or stormwater tax that was being put in place on every time that there was rain, essentially it goes to a stormwater pond, and that was 4%, you know, $12 million plus. And we got rid of that the first day. Well, 12 times 4 is $48 million that we cut right away on that. And we've been able to find ways to invest in our stormwater ponds through our capital plan rather than through the separate tax that was approved by the previous council. So there's lots of things going on that I think we can point to on the financial front. There's a lot of smaller things, like we promised to get a grocery store done. Now, I had no power in getting a grocery store done, neither did City Council. We certainly were at the table supportive, but you know, it's a private sector thing. And because of the investment by Jamie Massey and Dino Melchior and Mike Stoller and their partners in the building across from City Hall, and then a huge investment by a local family to say, we want a grocery store right in downtown Barrie. It's massive. And that's a beautiful thing for our downtown residents that are ever growing with these buildings that are being built downtown, to have a grocery store that you can walk to, that you can get the charcuterie, or you can get the meal for the evening, or you can get the veggies for the week, or whatever it is. I think it's a really positive thing for downtown.
Mm-hmm. Now you've come out strong, and I appreciate that. I'm hearing that. And one of the first things that you said, though, was that you had a goal, you had a mission to restore the dignity of council, to restore the dignity of the office, and as well rebuild some otherwise frosty relationships. There are people who would say, you know, how are you going to accomplish a 0% increase? And I know you're talking about operation and internal, et cetera. You just described some of these ways. There must have been a sea change of attitude, a strategic conversation, a planning conversation with the director level and the CAO at the city. Something changed significantly over decades. There was this date in time that it was going to be a new era. Tell me, how do you convey that? How do you get people to come on board this new vision of, well, I want you to describe it.
Well, I think, look, the people of Barrie voted for it. And at the end of the day, we work for the citizens. And so, you know, when that's the case, I think that everybody's got to take a moment to determine how they're going to get in line with what the people see going forth. What we didn't know at that time was that the inflation that started hitting was going to start hitting. It was always an issue that it could happen. It was something economists highlighted would be a potential issue we were going to face going forward. We had no idea, though, how bad it was going to be, and we didn't realize how bad it was going to be in terms of families making ends meet. So at the same time as we started this conversation on getting a rein on the spending that is in the operations budget, and really focusing on capital works like fixing the roads instead of just an expansion of City Hall. There were also these things happening in the world that were influencing the environment. Inflation was going up, jobs were being impacted, construction costs were out to lunch. The needs by individuals to make ends meet were becoming greater and greater. And so, where I made a campaign commitment in one environment, it became only that much important as we move forward. And I think that senior staff, our public servants, our council recognized what was happening at the same time. So rather than a philosophic decision to do 0% because we want to rein in spending at City Hall, it became a decision of necessity because, dining room tables were bare from food in many cases. And so that, I think, is a very good thing. I think it's a good leadership moment for the city. It was a good leadership moment for our public servants to be able to say, okay, yeah, we do have to live within our means a little bit more right now because of what's happening out on the street with families making it becoming harder and harder for them to make it work.
Mm-hmm. And you know, there's talk, people might raise the term, you know, austerity and austerity measures, and we've heard when that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. We have heard when that doesn't work. What are you hearing right now? What opportunity have you had to engage with residents to sort of gauge the feedback on how effective those measures have been?
You know, the interesting thing
and by
in
the way, excuse me, Mayor,
yeah,
I don't want to. I'm not.
Yeah.
Just so that we're clear, I'm not referring to it as austerity measures, but I say that can come up in conversation.
Well, yeah.
This is a different approach.
And I think there's a difference between austerity and priority. You know, austerity is you know, cutting spending because things have gone out of control. And I don't think they ever got to a point of being completely out of control. I think that there was an expectation that the taxes will go up, so therefore there'll be more to spend, whether it was from the resident or from our public servants. Now, at the same time, you have to realize we have a city that we've been focusing, and this is one of the things I think over the last number of years we've been very successful at, focusing on getting housing built, focusing on getting jobs to market, i.e., businesses to build spaces so that people can work. And through those processes, we've had record new taxation coming online without going back to the taxpayer who's paying it every year, and it's hitting them. So by increasing the number of people who are paying taxes, we can limit how much an individual's tax goes up. $6 million in 2025 was new taxation hitting the market. $6 million in 2024 was new taxation hitting the market. That's because of the number of houses, that's because of the number of jobs and businesses we've been able to be successful in attracting to this community, and it's the number of businesses that are expanding in this community who are doing such incredible work. So, you know, I think that there's multiple ways to look at this. And the last piece I would say is this, that we focused on getting the community projects done that have been talked about for 20 years. Having the cadets move across the bay, that's happening. You know, we just approved the lease to get over into the South Shore Centre. Moving forward, the Performing Arts Centre, which is going to go right down at the foot of Bayfield Street and Lakeshore. These are incredibly important projects that will move forward. There's another 20 of them. Bryan Drive opening. It's another piece of the things that, you know, you and I sat on council and assumed would be done, you know, 8 or 9 years ago. They just didn't get done. And so I think that that prioritization of investing in our community versus just investing in City Hall every year, that's where my head wanted to go. And certainly it's where council and our public servants have gone over the last 2 years.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And when we come back, we've teased some you know, the intention of seeing some of these priorities come to fruition, and you did list a number of them that did. When we come back from the break, I'd actually like to take a moment to go into some of the achievements that actually landed. Yeah. And I think there's a bit of a list of them, so we might actually take up an entire segment of that. And so just to give the audience a bit of an idea of where I want to go with this, where I'm hoping we can go, we talked about what you ran on and what the intention was. Let's talk about where we are so far, and then later on in the show we'll talk about where we're going. I think that kind of makes sense to you. So stick with us. When we come back from the break, more from Mayor Alex Nuttall on really the state of the city of Barrie, where we are and where we're going. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Barrie City on the Move, and I'm having a great conversation with Mayor Alex Nuttall. We've been discussing and reviewing the last 2 years of this current term of council and really how the mayor and council have navigated a little bit of the uncertainty, whether it's economic or otherwise, that Canadians have faced, and certainly we faced and felt here right at home. We've been discussing priorities and how they've rolled out. And you know, in this segment here, we started to touch on some of the accomplishments as you and members of council, members of the leadership team sort of figured out what the dynamic was and assured some alignment in how you would move forward as a cohesive team, serving the people that you're elected and appointed and hired to serve. Let's talk about some of those accomplishments, some of those achievements, and you know, if sort of the mental list rings true, there have been a number.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the last number of months, we'll pick up where we left off here. The cadets moving over to the South Shore, getting a space for them to be able to do their training exercises, to be able to access the water in a more safe manner. If you think about where they are right now, you've got a marina for full-time boats on one side and the transient marina on the other. And then you've got 12-year-old kids jumping in, 14-foot sailboats and learning to sail in between. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's unsafe, quite frankly. So seeing that move across the lake, I think, is a major piece for us. It unlocks that downtown, center ice position where you have Bayfield Street, our busiest road, meeting the waterfront. And the idea that we could have something that's a city building program there, I think, is incredibly important for the city going forward, and it will speak to the culture of the city, and I mean that in more than the arts and culture form. I mean in terms of what do we believe needs to take weight in the city and have a central presence. And so an idea that I'd had and spoken with members of the arts community about was moving the Performing Arts Centre from the old Fisher Central site, where the city had the Fisher Auditorium, down to the waterfront to where the cadets currently are operating. And we successfully made that move. We've got now $10 million in the bank that we've saved that's going towards the Performing Arts Centre. I'll have some more announcements on that coming to be able to allow for that project to actually get capitalized and built. And then when you think about it, you go across the street from that. If you're standing on the waterfront and you're looking towards downtown, you've got a transit terminal. Well, one of the projects that we're completing right now is the move of the transit terminal over to Allendale to align with the downtown Allendale GO train station. And that move really created an opening over at the downtown transit terminal. And so we had put a priority in my office of attracting a university into Barrie, and specifically into downtown Barrie, because the more we can do to attract people downtown who are, having a positive impact on what's happening around them, the better. And so we had Eric in my office reach out to every university we could think of to come to Barrie. It got down to about 3 that were interested, 2 that were really interested. And in the end, Lakehead was the right fit. The right fit because they're already in the region. They're in Aurelia. They've got the infrastructure available. They've invested here. They've been successful. They've got a track record of knocking it out of the park, of growing these, satellite university sites. And so we announced as well that Lakehead University is coming into downtown Barrie. They are starting with a STEM program, which I could not be happier with. When you think about what it is you want your university to do, I was a student of the social sciences, but that's not where I wanted it to go, although I would have been happy with that as well. Seeing that we're going, the science, technology, engineering route is really important. So what they're doing right now is they're going to have software engineering, computer engineering, electrical engineering, all starting, mechatronics, all starting in downtown Barrie. So your son or daughter from around the city can, instead of going away to school, can actually access it right here. And the beauty of these programs are that they're aligned with the whole industrial, the newest industrial revolution, if you will, in terms of moving towards AI, et cetera. And we're really excited about that university opportunity, and Lakehead's been a great partner so far.
And just to confirm, this is happening right on the main floor of the existing transit terminal, and I understand that is phase 1 of a project that will program out for about 5 years while you continue to discuss future opportunities.
Yeah, so I think we've already got an idea of what the permanent looks like, but we can't take that to market until we have all of the I's dotted and T's crossed.
Fair enough. You heard it here sort of first.
Yeah. You've heard it here that we have a plan and we're not just doing something short term. But I think it's important that we get it right. And it's important that we leverage what the university has to offer with other institutional pieces that exist. Look at Georgian College. I mean, a massive investment in downtown Barrie. Something around 90,000 square feet across from City Hall, 800 to 1,000 students. It couldn't happen at a better time, especially when you think about the amount of domestic enrollment and how much it's going to go up. The opportunity now exists again for that young man or young woman to be able to go and follow their dreams right in downtown Barrie and not have to leave town. And maybe they're from the surrounding areas, or maybe they're from right here in the city of Barrie. But the reality is, if you're in the city of Barrie, you can just get on the city of Barrie bus, go do your college or university degree, and then get back on the bus and go home. And that's that lifestyle that I think that we've been trying to build for a very, very long time. You and I were sitting on council together as councillors, you in Ward 8 and me in Ward 10. And we were sitting there trying to get a university done. And we didn't get it done. And the reality is, as I stand here today, is the dollars that we are now committing are actually less than the dollars that we had to commit back then when you include inflation. That's a good news story. So I think these things that are finally happening, finally coming to fruition, that was the true goal of what we were setting out to do as a council, the YMCA.
If you don't mind, though,
Yeah.
I'm just going to kick this can a little bit out there, because it really, the words that came to my mind was there was a lack of political will. There was a lot of, discussing and making it look like you're talking about something, but at some point it seemed like there just wasn't that extra amount of political will to make it happen. And I don't know, I don't want to point it to one thing or another, but if I was to summarize it all, there was a lot of conversation, and just for some reason there wasn't the political will to make it happen.
Well, I think on the university, for instance, I leveraged my relationship with the province to deliver $1 million for student housing downtown, which will help significantly along the way of getting that student housing built. That's a piece of it. The other thing I think that, and I want to stop there and say thank you to our MPPs for delivering on that, because they made it happen, right? And it was, if there was going to be a weakness in a university in downtown, it was going to be student housing. So I think we're really blessed to have that relationship. The other thing I think that is really important to understand about governance is that it's really easy to write words on a piece of paper. Right? Like, you and I used to do this all the time together. We want this change or that change. What does council actually do? We write words on a piece of paper, and then we put our hands up or we take them down, and then we expect the rest to happen. And the reality is, if you don't have somebody in the background, pushing these things along, having the political will, having the follow through, understanding what implementation of a project looks like, then it's going to falter, it's going to stagnate, and it's not going to proceed forward. And so the work that folks see at City Council is the writing on the piece of paper and the hands up and the hands down. And the 60 hours a week that we put into following through on what Council has asked the public servants to do is what the Mayor's office does in between.
Mm-hmm. And I think that as I'm hearing you speak, it's not just about having a building outfitted and having students come into the downtown. I do believe it's about those programs, but actually it's also about what we will see down the road, and that has been that we as a city, one of the largest cities to not have an actual university in its boundaries, would suffer from the brain drain, the people leaving to go to other centers to get their education and quite likely not come back to work. And we've got, sir, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, yeah, I was just wanting to say, you're exactly right. So Georgian College has a stat, 50% of the students that go to Georgian College stay in Barrie, right? So 1 and 2. If that holds true for university, what's been happening to date is that folks have been going out of town. 1 in every 2 Barrie students that leaves Barrie doesn't come back. And it's probably 2 and 3 don't come back, or 3 and 4 that don't come back. So how do we keep that talent here? How do we keep the engineers here working with businesses like Innovative Automation, working with our local manufacturers, Honda, right? How do we make sure that people can realize their dreams without going somewhere else? This is how we do it. And the connection to business, the connection to jobs, the connection to higher paying jobs that we all want here, the connection to attracting businesses, not just our local ones growing, It's all tied into the moves that Georgian College and Lakehead University have made. I think there's a lot of these types of, projects happening now and actually moving forward that haven't in the past. And I don't want to, make light of the YMCA. This is a massive investment. The province of Ontario kicked in $30 million to make sure that there was going to be a YMCA in Barrie. It's been 8.5 years, 9 years now since we've had a YMCA. It affects the social fabric of our community. It affects those with the least means the most. It affects the ability for the intermingling of different demographics to take place in a space at a very low cost. And so what we're going to see with the YMCA being built is some of those pieces come back to the table. And I know we're running short on time, but I'll tell you, one of the most beautiful things that ever happened to me was jumping on a treadmill, and I think I've said this to you before, at the YMCA, and having Willard Kinsey on one side and Rob Hamilton on the other, and having this conversation about the values of our city, the vision for our city, and these two, visionary mayoral leaders for the city having this conversation with, some 19-year-old or 20-year-old on a treadmill in between. That's had a permanent effect on me. And we need the spaces for these things to happen. And the YMCA is going to be a big part of that. And they do so much more than just having a gym. But they're going to be a big part of that going forward, and we're finally getting it done.
Give me 1 minute. And we'll find time. Don't worry. We will during the break. We will invent time. But since we're on the topic of the YMCA, there have been conversations in the past about a YMCA, and is there sort of an overlap of services with Barrie's rec centers? Tell me why the YMCA is vital from that perspective.
Well, I think there's numerous things the YMCA does. It's everything from helping new Canadians when they get into the community. There's going to be transitional housing partner between the YMCA and Youth Haven. There is the economic side in terms of providing employment support to individuals who are looking for jobs. There are the day camps that they do, which they do for basically free if you don't have the means to be able to use them, which is what I used and leveraged as a child. I still remember my counselor's name, Rita. She was awesome. Playing kick the can, swimming, basketball, soccer, things that became very important in my life. I can track back to the YMCA. The overlap of service is it's not an overlap so much as it is, I think there are supports that exist within the YMCA that don't necessarily exist within the city. And yes, you can get some money from the city if you don't have the means to be part of a program. But I'll put it in perspective. I think when you look at the Y and you have, and this is me going back to my own childhood, where we could go to swimming lessons, we could go and have basketball lessons, we could go to open gym. I remember playing, hockey, floor hockey with George Todd at lunch times. There's all of these things that we're able to do. It wasn't a $100 cost maximum or $150 maximum. I could gear my entire, social life to being able to be there, meeting other people, and existing in this really cool space while I lived in government housing. And what the city does is we try to help where we can, but what the Y does is they create a program that really fits for all. And both of these things need to be there, because eventually I didn't need the YMCA to supply me with programming. I can pay for it. I now go to East Bayfield, I go to Peggy Hill, and that's awesome. But those spaces that the Y creates and provides, the social fabric, the ability for these young people to get out of the situations they're in and just be kids and young people in a really safe space, at the same time interacting with leadership throughout the city. I don't think you can replace that, and I don't think that you can emulate it in another space. I think the Y is uniquely positioned to be able to deliver that.
Well, I think we pushed our limits a little bit, and I'm glad we did. I really am glad we did. When we come back from this break, we're going to have invented a little bit of time and caught up on some time, but I really think that was worth exploring. So stay with us on the other side of this break for more from Mayor Alex Nuttall. We're going to touch on some more of the city's accomplishments, and then we're going to get into some budget and sort of future casting, if you will. I don't know if that's a word, but we'll be right back after this break. It is now. Exactly. Welcome back to Barrie City on the Move, and as promised, not only did we invent some time, we also invented a word apparently before going to break, but I'm here with Mayor Alex Nuttall, and we're talking about really the state of the city, things that we've accomplished, some things that really you and council are proud of, that you believe you're delivering value to the residents. You've heard the residents and you are delivering on quality of life and bare necessities, foundational elements for residents of the city of Barrie. Want to just touch on a few more of those items before we get into talks on budget and really what the future holds. But we had to go to break. We've covered some great things. We talked about the Sea Cadets moving downtown, creating some space for the university to really, Lakehead, to have a great foundation and a foothold within the city, really protect the future of the labor force and ensure that, residents, you talked about 1 and 2 have traditionally left the city and or stayed away, that improving those odds and improving those numbers so that we develop graduates who will serve and service the industry right here in the city of Barrie. We touched also on the value that a YMCA brings to really nurturing vulnerable and nurturing youth and ensuring that they grow up as you did. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that where do you draw some of your inspiration is from your own experiences on maybe what was available and what wasn't available. So I know you're carrying that with you as you lead council. But what are some of the other things that really have stood out for you as an accomplishment, something that you believe was either long overdue or just something that was timely and necessary?
Well, I think it's important, when you look at the YMCA, for instance, that's investing in like social infrastructure is what they refer to it. It's investing in, the opportunities to exist. The flip side is that we also have to invest in safety. We have to invest in ensuring that we have a stable environment for people to live in, whether they're a senior going for a walk or they're, a young mother or father taking their kids to the park. And so policing is an important issue to me. It's actually something I committed to in the election as well. And what I said in my platform was that we were going to increase the police presence downtown, and we were going to increase the police presence in the city. And I think that we've done that already, but there's more work to do. So I'm going to go over what we've done, and then I'll talk about what this budget has. Firstly, when I was elected, there were 0 police officers in Barrie's downtown. We upped that to 2 in the summer of 2023. Which was our first, year as mayor of the city of Barrie. We then increased that to 8 officers in 2024, including our high crime area team, and I've forgotten the name of it, but they positioned themselves in downtown during the summertime as well. And so those 8 were actually probably 14 or 16 officers that were in the vicinity of the downtown at all times. What I think that we have been missing is the foot patrol, and it made a lot of headway in 2024 in the summertime. We had the side-by-side going around. We had officers walking downtown Dunlop Street and throughout that area, but it wasn't as robust as I would want it to be. It was a great step in the right direction. So as we moved into budget 2025, we were having the conversation at the police board, and you and I sit on this police board together. The recommendation from the police department was somewhere in the neighborhood of 6%, just over 6%. And, I made a request that we start looking at what security the city is paying for downtown that's not policing, and how do we amalgamate these two things, find some cost savings, but also use those cost savings to invest in police officers rather than just having security. And the reason's this: if you have a security guard, their capability to deal with an incident is not what a police officer's is. They are eyes and ears, but they don't have a direct walkie-talkie to other police officers. They certainly don't have the same capacity to deal with an incident that's happening. I don't think they instill the same confidence as officers do. They do a great job, but it's just not the same. And so we ended up with about a 6.99% increase with the police because of that request that the police board made at my request. And we'll see through the process where it completely lands. But I think it's a very responsible budget for the police, because you look around, there's like 25% increases happening in some places. 18, 17, 16, 15. Policing is getting expensive, partially because the changes the province has made with legislation, the requirements for police boards and for police officers, but also because we need more officers. Our city's gone from, when we served on council together, it was in the 130, 125,000 neighborhood, and we're 165,000 today, but we haven't increased the number of officers that we need. That's an issue. So we need to make sure we're allowing the police to grow at the same rate as the city. And yes, there'll be efficiencies by having more people, but it's not to the degree which you don't have to increase the number of officers when your city's grown by 30%. We need to make sure that funding's in place. And so I think that we've both invested in that this year, but secondly, we've done it at a far lesser increase in cost than all of our surrounding municipalities, as well as municipalities across the province.
Yeah, some of the municipalities across the province are looking at upwards of 25, closing in on 30% increases. I do believe that the city of Barrie has acted responsibly as well by integrating special constables and auxiliaries to really help bolster, and that those are very cost-effective and efficient ways of increasing presence, while at the same time, under the supervision of a sworn officer, they have that sort of, by extension, those additional powers that you spoke to that will make a change. What are you hearing from the downtown residents visiting the downtown? What are you seeing in terms of numbers? Is there sort of growth, and are the visits coming back up, and what are the shop owners saying to you?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of buy-in for the roaming officers in downtown this year. I'll give you one anecdotal, okay, and it's close to home, so take it for what it's worth. But my wife was there on a Friday. She goes downtown and visits a local bakery downtown on Fridays and gets some bread, etc. And as she was walking up to it, two police officers were walking by. They stopped and said, "Hello, ma'am, you having a good day?" She said, "Yeah, I'm having a great day, and it's really nice down here. Any problems downtown? Everything's good?" "No, everything's great." She walked into the bakery. The officers walked into the bakery and proceeded to ask all of the patrons if there was anything that they could do to make it a more inviting atmosphere, and asking the staff as well. And then they exited 3 minutes later. That presence instills confidence, and it instills a perception of safety. And I think it speaks really well to the pilot project that we ran last year, and the reason and rationale for an expanded program this year. Downtowns across North America are experiencing mass homelessness like we've never seen before. Barrie's actually in a better position than most of the other downtowns that I visit, probably 90% of the downtowns I visit. But we're not used to this. And we need to make sure that we both have the tools for those people to get help, as well as the tools for our community and our society at large to be safe, to feel safe, and to want to go there. And so that's what we're trying to achieve through all of the different programs we're putting together.
Now, speaking of having the tools that you need and ensuring safety, one of the things that has been spoken about for a number of years within the city of Barrie was that 90% of the calls for service for fire and EMS are responded to within 6 minutes by the fire service. But there is a pocket of Barrie that isn't and hasn't been able to sort of...
Not anymore.
Talk to me about it. Talk to me.
Well, this was, again, in my election platform, was to get Station 6 built. We've talked about this for a very long time. And then we have a tornado that hits, and it takes 13 minutes for trucks to get on scene in an emergency situation where you already have, 12,000 people living. Like, that's just not acceptable, right? We should have been planning out the infrastructure in advance of these houses going in, not lagging behind it. And so we've gone in, we've secured the land, we've started the build of Fire Station 6 on Mapleview Drive East, which will certainly increase the safety in the area and hopefully reduce the insurance premiums in the area for residents. And we're excited about that. We've already budgeted all of the new firefighters. Training's taken place. Some of them were hired early to make sure that we got that whole culture piece dealt with. And I think it's a big win for Southeast Barrie. It's a big win for the city of Barrie. And it's sad that it took so long.
When we come back from break, let's talk about the future. The future in terms of budget, the future in terms of forecasting. We've got some things on the horizon. There's been buzz in the air around ideas of elections that may be happening within the province and the federal government, obviously. And there's also some future investment taking place in the city of Barrie that I think we should talk about. So budget, forecasting, and the future of Barrie is on deck when we come back right after this break. More from City of Barrie Mayor Alex Nuttall. Stay with us. Welcome back to Barrie City on the Move, and Mayor Alex Nuttall and I are having a great conversation around the state of the city. We talked a lot about the goals, the ambitions, some of the accomplishments, probably touch on some things yet still to happen and transpire, but none of it happens without getting sort of a collective buy-in from the city, those who are charged with sort of bringing forward their budgets and making sure that their goals align with the strategic plan and what you have on deck. But also the partner relationships that you have as a city, codependency to deliver certain services, funding envelopes that may come from more senior levels of government, et cetera. And of course, there's that strategic plan that sounds great until life changes sort of without notice. And we've got an election that we are obviously underway happening just sort of south of the border, and what influences that may have locally here. So I'm going to throw it over to you in terms of how confident are you? Where are you feeling on this, on the city's latest budget that has just sort of gone through ratification, and the relationships that you have with other partners that help make things happen?
Well, look, I'll start with the partners and work backwards. You know, the library has come in with, I think, a very responsible budget, one that isn't asking for massive increases, one that's worked with the city on developing out what their forecasting looks like and their financial policies look like, and really trying to take on some of that culture that we've brought to the city table in terms of living within our means and not just asking for more to ask for more. And so I think there's been a ton of work done by the library board to get there, and I'm very thankful for that. The work that's done by the police is no different. You know, they came in with a lower request than I had asked. They also returned $1.45 million to the city in dollars that they had been given in previous years, but hadn't needed. And I think that shows that transparency and accountability that exists between the police and the city of Barrie. One of the places that we need to do some more work is the county. You know, we have some services that just are barely offered here. I'll give you an example. Long-term care, we go to the taxpayers and we raise the money into the city through taxes, and then we get sent an invoice by the county for long-term care, but they just don't exist in the city of Barrie. And so it's somewhere else that these services exist, and it's just not a fair playing field. And the same exists for children's services. You know, we're just not getting out of the county what we should to invest in our young people.
Now, let me ask you,
Yeah.
is your observation that the structures and the infrastructure, the building is outside the city of Barrie, but what about, I suppose, the representation in terms of the residents in care?
Well, I think that, so number one, the representation of individuals who are receiving services is below, well below. But the fact is that it exists outside of the city, so of course it's going to be below, right? And so, you know, you go and say to yourself, you know, your parents, we're going to put them in a home and long-term care and have that type of support, and you've got to go an hour and a half to see them every time. Like you're probably going to be, I don't know that fits. And so that's something we need to work through. The children's services is similar. We need to work through that. And then I think that the way that we are financing the capital works of the county needs to be addressed. There's a $200 million build coming to Rose Street for affordable housing and other services. We have to pay that over 10 years. There's a build that finished in Aurelia. There's one that's happening in Bradford. The total of these are $350 million, of which the city is responsible for 25%. So we know there's $80+ million the city's got to foot the bill of, and we've got to pay it over 10 years, which is $8 million a year. 1% on your taxes is 3%, or is $3 million. So you can see the county is creating a 3% increase for the people of Barrie each and every year. And what we need to do is match the payback period of that mortgage, if you will, to the life of the asset, more in line with that 25 to 35 year. That'll free up roughly 50% of the dollars that they're charging us and then reduce the impact on today's tax rates. But I think overall we need to look at the county and say, is this working, right? Is the current structure working? I would argue that it's working in some places and not in others. They fund a lot of social services in Barrie. Why? Because from around the county, they can't fund them everywhere, and so everybody's vulnerable population gets sent to Barrie. So yes, they should be funding them very well here. But then when you look at the long-term care and the children's services, we're underfunded. And if I went to the population and said, where would you like us to invest? The seniors who built the country, the children who are coming, would be top of the list. And we need to have an alignment take place with the county on that. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there on the partners.
Well, let me ask you this question, though. If you look at other areas of the province, whether it's York Region or whether it's Peel Region, et cetera, there recently was conversation around whether or not you should have regional governance. Simcoe County hasn't been part of that conversation, certainly to the same for that it has in Peel. But similarly, there was conversation in Barrie not so many years ago around whether Barrie should have its own municipal police service or whether we should look to the OPP. These conversations do come up. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, thank God we didn't go to the OPP, because you look at the cost increases around the province right now, a lot of that's associated with the OPP. And it's not that the OPP doesn't do incredible work, they do. But they're not necessarily built to be the downtown police force either, right? And we're at a place as a city where we are a city. We are a regional center. And we need to have an ability to work with the police force to deliver on the things that we care about, i.e., this year it's this downtown initiative, which will free up police officers around the city. So I think that the idea of moving from that is not a good one, if you ask me. I think that we should continue where we are, and for many years I've been told the business case is you save money if you go with the OPP, and the first 2 years that I've been in, we've had much lower budget increases than the OPP municipalities.
As it relates to the other services offered throughout the county partnerships?
Oh, I think everything's on the table. Everything's on the table. The budget increases are substantive. Not only are the budget increases coming to the taxpayer from our side as a municipality, but the province has increased funding to the county for the vulnerable services immensely. In Barrie and Simcoe County alone, there was an 86% increase for homelessness prevention. You say, well, what does 86% equal? $11.5 million. That means the province every year funds somewhere in the neighborhood of $24 or $25 million to homelessness prevention on top of what we give and others give. So, when you look at the city's budget, to come back to the city's budget, we have a 0% on our city operations. We haven't received the increases from the province for our services the way that the county has. And then they have a much higher increase coming. So, that conversation about the reality that people are facing at their dinner tables has not gotten through to the county yet. And it needs to if it's going to be a sustainable partner for the city of Barrie.
Now, you've been quite assertive, I'm going to use that word, assertive in redeveloping the relationship with senior level of government, and you touched on that in the very first segment here. You've been quite proactive about bringing some attention to the city of Barrie with the Premier's office, with the Ontario government, with the federal government as well. There has been some fruit on that tree, obviously. Tell me about some of that relationship, and there are a number of factors that will come, but I'll certainly let you sort of dealer's choice.
Well, when you think about housing, we've been incredibly effective on getting housing built, and what does that mean? That means all those 20-some-year-olds who are sitting in the basements of their parents' places will have a better shot at getting housing right here in Barrie. So let's get more supply to market. We've delivered 3,500 plus units in 2 years. We received funding from the province of Ontario of $6.4 million. We received funding from the federal government of another $26 million over 4 years. And so we're just getting those dollars in and we're putting them right into, affordable units, attainable units, projects that will have a social fabric but also deliver lots of supply, really trying to be efficient with the dollars that are given to us by the provincial and federal governments. And we also have the RIC. We have the Regional Innovation Center announced for Barrie and the surrounding area, the greater Barrie area, and it is going to help, university, college, school boards connect with business in the community and deliver, learning opportunities as well as expansion opportunities for local businesses. So it's been really great. But when I talk about Team Barrie, which we talk about all the time, it is about having a team that includes, yes, council, yes, our public servants, yes, obviously me as mayor, but certainly it's much broader than that. We brought in our provincial and federal members of Parliament, and we said, we want you to be at the table. Like, you have to go and fight for the things that the city of Barrie wants and its citizens want. So let's get your feedback up front on how we do that effectively and efficiently. And through that process, working with these great representatives, the city of Barrie's received more funding in 2 years than we have in the last 20, because we're consulting not only with the public and our staff, but we're bringing in the folks who are at the table. They're making the decisions and working on our behalf. And I think that it really goes back to that tone of cooperation, collaboration, team spirit, and getting rid of the iciness and the bitterness and getting rid of the things that divided us as a community.
I'm going to tell you, us versus them is something that you're looking to get to really make a Team Barrie. Now, we've just got a moment left for the show, but obviously some continued changes in the air, whether that's an upcoming federal election or the talk of potentially, there's a lot of electioneering, as you might say, coming in the air. There's a lot of talk out there.
Yeah.
Just give me a minute on your thoughts of what that relationship might look like or how that might change.
Well, look, I think on the federal level, if things hold true from what they are today, we'll have greater influence, I think, in the goings-on in government, because our local representatives are both of the party that I'm guessing and society's guessing will be leading the country after the next election, although elections matter. And provincially, I don't want anything to change. We have tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure that are benefiting the city of Barrie and that we're working through right now, and stability on that front for me is the name of the game. I'll work with whoever we send to Queen's Park and whoever we send to Parliament Hill. They will be part of Team Barrie. If you're asking me, has this been an effective relationship amongst all levels right now, the answer is yes.
And with that, I want to thank you, Mayor Nuttall, for giving time to get the word out, to share, and hopefully this message gets out to members of the community who obviously are keen to know what's going on with my tax dollars, how am I being served, how am I being represented, and certainly appreciate you. We ran out of time. That's how busy you and your colleagues at council in the city have been, and I want to thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thanks so much.
And we'll see you next time on Barrie, City on the Move. Thanks for joining.